the October 8th edition of the TimeformUS Forecast. Today I have a special guest in Chuck Simon. He's a former trainer and more famously now known as the host of his own podcast, Going in Circles. I think I finally have that name right, Chuck. I used to always search for running in circles and it wouldn't come up. I think I nailed it this time. So very happy to have you on today. We're going to talk about the Keeneland All Stakes Pick 5 this Saturday. And just a couple before for our guests who aren't familiar with you. You are a former trainer. I don't believe you train anymore, correct?
No, I just do. I critique everyone else now. I'm a not a paper trainer because that's a bad word, but I'm a retired trainer.
All right. And just on one quick note on that, who was your best horse, just out of curiosity?
My best horse probably was Battle One. He was a really good sprinter, and about 10, 12 years ago, he won a bunch of sprint stakes. He won the Churchill Downs handicap on the Derby undercard and paid $35, and that was a really good day. And he might be best known as running Lost in the Fog into the ground in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, which I think was Lost in the Fog's last race, but we kind of had a little speed duel and didn't work out well for either of us.
I do remember him. Now, when he won the race on the Derby undercard, was that on dirt?
That was on dirt, yeah.
Okay, so he was good on both surfaces, which oftentimes I think sprinters seem to be able to transfer back and forth a little more easily. Did you find that as a guy that trained horses, that sprinters were able to move back and forth between the two?
Yeah, for some reason, it seems like it's less of a varying degree. I guess it's more of, for lack of a better word, the sprinters seem to be able to handle it a little bit better than the horses going long. But I guess it's probably more of a race dynamics thing than anything, because dirt races going long are run completely different than turf races going long for the most part, while sprints are sprints, and they're pretty much going as fast as they can the whole way.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. And before we dive into the races, just tell us a little bit about your podcast, where it can be found, a little bit about your co-host, because it honestly is one that I enjoy. You guys aren't afraid of any topics. As me being a guy who works in the industry, there's some things I would love to talk about, but I really can't. You guys don't have those limits. So it's a show that I do really enjoy listening to. I get it almost every Monday. And tell people where they can find it.
It's like you said, its name is Going in Circles, and right now I'm only doing one show. I was doing 2 shows a week, but I have been on the road for a while, so I usually do a Tuesday show, Going in Circles live from a studio in South Florida, but I haven't been there. So we've been doing Big Monday. It's a show that I tape with my friend and a really good handicapper, Barry Spears, who is the URBN handicapper on Twitter. And we try to have it be a conversational podcast. I mean, we don't analyze races, we don't make picks. And sometimes we'll go over a race, or we'll talk about upcoming races and what our thoughts are. But we try to talk about the current topics, and we have different backgrounds in racing. Barry is more of a strictly a guy who's not been involved in the industry, and obviously I'm the opposite. So we have different takes, and I think that helps. And our chemistry is good, and I mean, we're real life friends too. So it's a good pairing. And like you said, we try to take on topics that might not be covered other places. And one of the things that was kind of our goal was to explain things, because the racing industry does a horrific job of explaining what the hell's going on. And a perfect example is yesterday at Delaware. Jockey falls off the race. It looks like he's going to win. And what have we heard from anyone from Delaware Park, the stewards, the commission? Nothing. So it's it sounds like the jockey actually passed out, and jockeys they have to cut weight, a lot of them, and at the end of a hot day, it's tough. I mean, Tyler Gaffleone was a bug boy, and he's a pretty solid guy, and he was having to really um, work, for lack of a better word, to do the weight. And in South
Mhm.
Florida in the summertime, it's extremely hot, it's extremely humid, and there was a couple occasions where he took, the rest of the card off because he just was dizzy, because he just literally hadn't eaten enough. And you know it, it, it that's what one of the things we want to do is explain to people why things happen, because a lot of times they don't get explained, and then you get off into tangents and theories, and that's really not a good thing in this world. I mean, this is the modern world um, of technology. Everyone has access to everything, and we have to be a lot more transparent, and racing has not been very good at doing that.
Yeah, I saw that race yesterday, the one in question, and of course on Twitter, people were jumping to conclusions that it was a fixed race, and of course, who in the heck's going to jump off a horse in front of a couple other horses? I mean, that's insane. But as you said, Delaware Park could do a better job. They need to come out and tell people what happened. I'm sure it's something that is not comfortable to talk about, talking about how hard it is for some jockeys to make weight. That's probably a different discussion for another day, about maybe we should raise the scale of weights, because that it's a common thing. We don't hear a lot about it, but if you've been around the track, there's a lot of jockeys that struggle with it. And this isn't the first time it's happened. There's been other races where jockeys have passed out during a race, as I'm sure you're probably aware. I think there was one at Finger Lake. So
Some of the horses I've bet on lately, it seems like the jockey passed out based upon the trips they've given him. But that again is a whole nother story as well.
yeah, we are very similar. Somebody posted a video of Squirtle Squirt winning the Breeders' Cup, and I commented, I think that was my last winner. But you do tend to remember the winner. So that said, let's dive into this all stakes pick five at Keeneland. And it starts with, we were talking about turf sprints earlier and sprinters in general. It starts with the grade 2 Woodford Stakes. And it's a race that there's going to be a heavy favorite. Golden Pal is 4-5 on the morning line. He's trained by Wesley Ward. He's kind of one of those horses that he's always going to be the favorite for as long as he's around, I believe. And I did a couple videos this week with David Aragona, and this was one of the races we previewed. And I don't particularly think Golden Pal is the cinch that the morning line would indicate. What did you think about his chances?
Well, when you look at the field, certainly it all starts with Golden Powell, because in his brief career, he has shown himself to be strictly a, a pace horse. I mean, he wants to be on the lead. Um, and this is probably a question better for you. Do you think if Fire Crow and Gaffleon tried, would they be fast enough to stick with Golden Pal
Uh,
early?
Personally, our pace projector actually has the two of them in front of it. We have the 4-horse Fire Crow on a clear lead, and Johnny Unleashed right alongside of them as they head into that turn. We do our pace projections a quarter mile into the sprints. In this particular case, I wouldn't be shocked if Golden Pal actually does lead the race, but I do think Firecrow has a pretty advantageous position drawn outside of him. So if he outbreaks him, fine, he can go to the front. If not, he can sit on his flank. And I'm always a fan in sprints of horses that are to the outside speed horses.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, that Fire Crow will probably concede to Golden Pal, um, based upon looking at his past performance. And this is the first time that Gaffleon's ridden him, at least the first time in 2 years. Um, and he does show races where he backs up in the stretch. Um, and I would think that their thought process might be, hey, Golden Pal's definitely sending, and instead of us getting in a speed duel, let's lap off him and try to sit off his flank, because there really doesn't appear to be any other speed that would get too involved. To me, the horse who I'm most interested in is a horse who's been frustrating to bet on, at least in the short term, is Extravagant Kid, who went on a little bit of a world tour. Um, he wound up winning the sprint at in Dubai when Ryan Moore, got him a really good trip, $1 million race too. And then he tried the King's Stand, which is a straightaway race at in Royal Ascot, and he ran well. I mean, he didn't run poorly at all. He got 116 time form for that race. Actually, he paired up 116 time form ratings um, for the two races at in Dubai and then Royal Ascot. And then his last race in Newmarket was a clunker. I mean, um, he just didn't show anything, and he since returned to the States and kind of regrouped. But I mean, he is the horse that might benefit if Fire Crow and Golden Pal do wind up hooking up, at least even around the turn. Um, and I just don't see anybody else in this race that is in the class of those three. My main issue with Fire Crow is how does he come out of the race against or out of the race at Parks where they raced, to put it mildly, over a plowed field at Parks. Um, and, you had 100 to 1 shot winning that race. It was just almost kind of like a draw line through a race, but Firecrow did battle early in that race for the lead, and I'm just wondering, coming back on short rest off of an effort like that, might not that take a little bit of sting out of him? And um, I mean, I'm probably not going to play Golden Pal 3 to 5, but I would probably take a shot with Extravagant Kid.
Yeah, that was my usual podcast partner selection, Extravagant Kid, for all the reasons you noted. He ran great overseas. I don't remember the exact odds. I think it was a pretty big upset in Maidan. I don't think he was one. We don't have the odds in the PPs
Right.
because, but I'm pretty sure he was a fairly long price. But as you say, he backed it up when he went to Ascot, and that King's Stand ran basically the same time form rating that he did in Victory, as you said. So I think he's definitely a contender in here. I don't see anything different from what you said. I would be shocked if any of the three that we've talked about don't win this race. I actually wound up picking Fire Crow. I do have the concerns that you do as well. He's coming back. I think it's on just 2 weeks rest, if I'm not mistaken. So it could go one of two ways. It could be that the Parks race kind of tightened him up, going fast over that basically bog of a course, as you say. And I'm just lining through the race. I could get burned. I'm not going to single him in the pick five. I'm going to use Extravagant Kid as well. And if Golden Pal beats me, I guess it'll be on to the All Stakes pick four for me from that time. So that's about it. Any closing thoughts on that? Just those three for you?
Oh, this is also the kickoff leg of the new bet that Keeneland's put out, the $3 pick turf pick three. So don't forget about that race if you have any other opinions in the turf races.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a really good point. I actually think that's a good bet. I like the higher minimum. I'm a guy who personally thinks it's gone way overblown with the 50-cent pools and dime supers and all that. I think this makes it a little bit tougher for handicapping, but you can also get some value where now everything's covered by people who just spread. How'd you feel about this new bet?
no, I like it. I like the whole concept of a higher minimum bet. I mean, I bet a lot of trotters, and like Mohawk has 20-cent pick threes. So like, unless you have 18 horse fields, it just the 20-cent pick three is just kind of a bad bet. I mean, it just is. It's tough. But the one good thing about this sequence that they've started out with is you have two really big fields following up a short field. I mean, the Woodford is 7, and I mean, really, there looks like three main contenders with a horse who's 4 to 5 morning line, which I'm sure will a lot of people will just single Golden Pal because of the competitiveness and the large fields in the other two legs. But I like the fact that they're trying something, and I mean, personally, I would hope that Keeneland would consider maybe lowering their takeout, and but across the board, because it's just too high, especially for a track that brags about record purses and record uh, horse sales, and I mean, like, you know,
Yeah, I mean, we all want lower takeout, no doubt about it. I haven't kept up with what it is at Keeneland, but the pick three you mentioned is 15%. And I'm not a guy, I don't like when people call it a low takeout, because 15 to me is still on the high side, but it's better than what we're used to. So that is certainly part of that pick three bet as well.
yes, sir.
So let's move on to the next leg. It is the Thoroughbred Club of America Stakes, 6 furlongs for older fillies and mares. Drew only a field of 6. Once again, we have a pretty prohibitive favorite. And where are you leaning in this one?
This race was tough for me because it's a sprint that doesn't have a whole lot of early speed in it. I mean, at least the the better horses are horses that are either stalkers or like Bell's the One, who's just a one turn close, a one run closer. Um, I mean, I kicked this around for a while, and I mean, I don't want to take 5-2 on Estelio Talentoso, but to me, she might be the horse that gets the run on. I mean, I'm assuming Frank's Rockette's going to the lead, right? I mean, does that make sense that he would go to the front, especially, or she would go to the front, especially from the rail?
Yeah, we talked about this on our race preview. This is actually the other one that David and I did. The other three are new territory for me, but I think she almost has to from the rail. She's a horse I think is a lot faster than what her PP show, but for some reason her connections don't seem to want to use that speed. But it seems like to me in here she has no choice but to go. If not, I would assume that the winner of this race last year, the 3 in the midst of Biz, is going to go to the front. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Frank's Rocket goes.
Yeah, in the midst of Biz has kind of after that race, went on a little bit of a hiatus. Won a race at Indiana where she was just much the best, and had to really work for it. And then the Presque Isle race, um, she kind of battled through quick fractions, but she really didn't have much late, and I don't know what to do with her. I mean, I could see her, if she was going to be on a clear lead here, I would give her a little bit better shot, but like with Frank's Rocket drawing the rail, and I just think Alvarado's hand is forced here. I don't think he's going to want to be sitting inside of in the mind of Biz, in that uncomfortable position that horses sometimes are in, when they're not on the lead, but they're not clear either. So um, I just and I just hate taking horses like Bell's the One in these races where it's the potential for a slower pace than par for the race is possible. And I don't know. I mean, honestly, I know this is kind of a cop out, but I really don't have a good feel for the race. I kind of like the 4, but I was really shocked at the morning line. I thought that horse was going to be 9-2, 5-1, not 5-2. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
think it just points to the lack of real depth in here. I mean, it's a 6 horse field. I think a couple of them in Club Car and the 5 Miss Mosaic. I don't see either one of them really having a big shot in here. So I'm personally kind of ignoring them. As far as in the midst of Biz, we have her shown on a clear lead in the pace projector. As I said, some people always point out, oh, the pace projector's wrong. The pace project. It's a starting point for me. We're
right.
looking at the past races. It doesn't always mean that's what's going to happen. And this is a case where I'm not sure. I think Frank's Rocket may go, but there's been times where I've thought that and she doesn't go. So I don't know if it's a trainer decision, but maybe the rail's going to force her hand. But I did pick in the midst of Biz on top, just because, as you said, that race in Indiana where it was basically a paid workout, even though she only won by a head. I thought she always had that race in hand. And in the rest guy, I always want to call Presque Isle Pid. I don't know why I've always done that. I think I tweeted about it once, but even in defeat, she basically ran the same speed figure on our pace adjusted figures that she did coming into this race last year. So I thought she was a decent alternative at 10-1. The horse you mentioned, the Estilo Talentoso, I worry a little bit that she just kind of runs the same race. She's as consistent as they come. She always runs right around on our numbers, 110 or so speed figure, which is unlikely to win a race like this. There's a couple others. Bell's the one who's been faster for the most part, but she has that pace thing, as you mentioned, where if no pace develops, she's in trouble. It's got her in trouble before. So she has the top figures in the race for sure. She's 7-5 for a reason. And I'm not sure what to do with this race. I was very similar to you. I suspect this is a race where in the pick five, I'm going to spread with the four horses I think have a chance to varying degrees and just hope to get through it personally.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. And the thing about Estelio Talentoso is that she only has 3 wins. She's not a horse that gets to the wire. I mean, if honestly, when you look at the race, Miss Mosaic only has 2 wins. We didn't talk about her at all, and she just looks like it. This is a big step up in class for her. And she's tackled Bell's the one the last 2 starts and got run by both times. And this doesn't figure to really change. I think the one thing about Frank's Rocket, going back to her, is if you look at her PPs. And this is the filly that ran in the Breeders' Cup Sprint last year. She won the Gallant Bloom by 7. She won the Prioress, easily, about as easily as you could ask for, right? She comes back this year, and he sends her in 4 consecutive, two out of 2 races in a row, where she gets Lasix. The only time she hasn't got Lasix this year was in the Winning Colors at Churchill, where arguably was her worst race of the year. So she might be a horse that bleeds, and they've kind of been, zigging and zagging, trying to find races where she can race on Lasix. And I don't know anything for sure. This is just conjecture. But like I said, this is a filly that ran in the Breeders' Cup Sprint last year. That's what their connections thought of her, as a 3-year-old filly. And all of a sudden, she's not even good enough for graded filly stake races, which, to me signifies that there's a reason for that. Bill Mott is a very meticulous trainer. He's he's a Hall of Famer for a reason, and I think that is, to me, is a sign that she probably really does need Lasix, and she does not get that here.
Yeah, that's a really good point. One I had kind of overlooked, to be honest. I had focused on her trip the last race where she really did have a tough trip at Colonial. She broke bad. She got basically pinched out of it, was last early and made a run. And I thought some people were overrating that trip because, to my eye, she still should have won that race. There was not anything of her quality, but the Lasix thing, you make a really good point. It does stick out. She's a horse who, is foolish as I thought it was to enter the Breeders' Cup Sprint, that's where they put her. So the connections obviously thought higher of her, and she's only running that one Grade 3 this year. So good point there. The other thing, since you brought it up, do you think the lack of Lasix hurts the female horses more than the males? I've seen that hypothesis thrown out there on Twitter and various message boards, and it does look like to me like there might be some merit. I think it's something you'd have to study on the data, but as a speed figure guy, I've noticed the filly and mare races tend to drop off a little more on the time that when there's not Lasix involved.
I got to be honest with you. I really have no idea. And I mean, I trained in the era of Lasix. We used Lasix when I worked for Alan Jerkins, and he was not a guy that used Lasix on all the horses. And I can't really recall, and because someone else has asked me, I've been asked this question before, and I didn't recall that we had more fillies bleeding than colts. I really didn't. Which would there's a million different theories about it, but I don't. I honestly, I really can't tell you. It's just a guess, but to me, I think it's more of an individual thing. I mean, some horses bleed a little bit. There's horses that bleed through Lasix a little bit, and you give them Lasix, they just have a little trickle, a little trace, and you get we could talk for we've done this over the last 2 decades talking about Lasix, but bleeding isn't like um, there's such a varying degree. It's like if you get in a little fender bender and you bump your right front panel a little bit, that's a way different than if someone comes and T-bones you and totals your car. But they're both car accidents. Bleeding is the same thing. You might have a
Mhm.
little trickle of a little trace of blood in the horse's trachea, or you might have blood pouring out of the horse's nose, like Aunt Pearl. That's a filly who looked, dominant last year as a 2-year-old filly, and then she bled terribly in her first race here at Keeneland in April without Lasix, and she was never even able to make it back to the races. So there's such varying degree, and to me, it's such an individual thing, and horses will bleed out of nowhere, and that's the one thing that I think people don't understand is that if my horse is showing heat in an ankle, well, I can isolate that and I can say, well, let's X-ray it. Let's check this out. Let's make sure that we're good. And every day we're going to monitor it and keep an eye on it. Bleeding just happens. I mean, you can't you can't um, scan a horse's lungs every day. You don't know what's going on down there, and unfortunately. Um, Once it happens, then it's more likely to happen again. And like you hear horses bled, and sometimes I think trainers use it as an excuse, but it's to answer your question, I really don't know. That was
Yeah,
a
and
long way. That
that's
was a long way of answering it, but I honestly, I can't. I couldn't tell you either way.
no, and I appreciate that because really, I think that's the truth is we don't know. And people ask me as a speed figure guy all the time, how has it changed things? And I give the same answer. At this point, I really don't know because there's just not a lot of data out there. I do think horses run a little bit slower without Lasix. I mean, just the fact they're carrying more water weight, I guess, would lead to that scientifically. But as far as putting a number on it, who knows? I think that's still up in the air, and it's going to take a lot longer and a lot more racing where horses don't have Lasix and then race with it before we're actually going to know. So I appreciate your honesty. I think it's something that's just going to have to be studied. So to wrap up this race, for me, it's another one where, like I said, I'm just going to try to get through it with those 4 horses that I mentioned. Hope that in the midst of Biz can actually repeat this year. I'm a big fan in there, and I think you were pretty much on the same page. Just a race you want to get through, right?
Absolutely, it's. I have no strong feelings on that race, other than I don't like Miss Mosaic at all, and she'll probably win now. But yeah, it's a tough race.
So we'll move on to the grade one First Lady. It's a mile on the turf for 3-year-old and up fillies and mares. Another interesting field, drew a big field of 13. So I guess the horse we have to start with, I think she is the morning line favorite, is Althea for Charlie Appleby, who's been on a North American domination tour this summer, where he just comes over and every race he enters, he wins. How do you view her chances?
You know, I bet her in the Just the Game, and I bet her in the Diana. And I was amazed both times at the price that I got on her. I really was almost like, how these days, if you're looking at the win pool and a horse is sitting there at 5 to 1, 4 to 1, going into the gate, and they win, a lot of times you expect to look up and see that they're now 2 to 1.
Yes.
But both times, I really liked her, and I mean, I didn't. I thought from early in the year that the American turf horses of both sexes are very soft. I think they've been very soft compared to the Europeans for a few years now. Um, Channel Maker won the Eclipse Award last year. Okay, and do you really have to say anything other than that? That Channel Maker was considered our best older American turf horse last year. He had a good 5 weeks, you know, like he spent the rest of the year losing. Um, that said, I think this morning line is, I think she'll be lower than 7-2, but I'm also, I'm a little concerned about the cutback here. Um, and it's a much bigger field than, a 13 horse field at Keeneland is there's going to be a lot of traffic, and um, I just feel like I've been fortunate with her, and a lot of people will just keep on, they'll keep on betting, they'll keep rolling the dice on the same horse. But to me, I'm gonna fade her here, especially
No,
with
I
Jamie
can see
Spencer.
that.
No offense, but Jamie Spencer I understand he's a good jockey and blah blah blah, but he has had some horrific rides in the U.S. before. I mean, just like unspeakably bad. So, um, to me, she's a filly that I'm going to try to beat in here.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I have similar concerns about her in here. She's a horse, believe it or not, I've actually bet the last two times. I actually had the exacta both times. I think I boxed it the first time because I just like both as runners, but didn't really see much reason she would turn the tables. But yeah, I'm kind of feeling the same way. I'm wondering, it looks like she was shipped back overseas and is now coming back. When you look at her work tab, I don't see anything since July. So obviously she's been working out, must have been taken back. So that concerns me a little bit. It can't be easy to ship back and forth across an ocean. So she can win this race, I would think, but there's some others I think can challenge her. Who are some of the alternatives you were interested in?
Well, the first horse, I like the way I handicap races is, and this might be uh, because I was, when I was a kid, I started with harness horses. Is I always look for the speed, and I always look to see who's going to be on the lead. And in this race, clearly it's going to be blowout. Um, unless she stumbles and loses a rider, she's going to be on the lead. Now they've gotten a lot of rain uh, in the Lexington area the last few days, so the track is going to be less than firm probably. So I look at her, and she gets Pratt back, and she has a lot of near misses. The one thing about her is, she's another horse that has uh, twice as many seconds and thirds as she does wins. But I just have a feeling that she's going to get a soft lead in here, and with a 13 horse field, that creates more bad trips than it does good trips, and that's I'm going to take a shot that she can wire this field.
Well, we're on the same page for sure in this one. It's almost like you did an advertisement for our pace projector, because blowout is shown on a very clear early lead, about as big as we show in our past performances. And what intrigues me in this spot too is when you look at the horses that are closest to her, it's a pair of 30-1 shots, and the one Abscond and the 4 Star Command. So even if they're trying to pressure her, I don't think it would be anything that would take too much out of her. And the horse that's shown in fourth is Hendy Woods, a horse who has never sniffed the early lead really in her entire life. So I'm totally with you. The one thing I would say, you mentioned the course is going to be less than firm. Personally, I like that when I want to bet a speed horse, because to me, it seems like more often than not, it'll kind of sap the kick out of the closers. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it honestly, I think it matter. It's course dependent. I think some courses seem like, um, softer turf favors speed horses. And I think some softer favors speed, or excuse me, favors closers. And I think Keeneland is one that favors speed. Um, and I think that is, that's something that, and of course, I mean, we've had a lot of discussions over the years about, um, a track that appears really wet being called fast, the track that appears really soft being called firm. So, sometimes you got to take the course designation with a grain of salt. But and I don't know how soft it's going to be. But they have had some rain, so it's not like it's going to be rock hard, or which a lot of times, I remember Belmont in the summertime. Sometimes we would get these heat waves, and the turf would be like they'd be going super fast fractions, and you just couldn't catch the speed horse. They would just send them, and it would be like they'd go down the road, and that would be it. But to me, she's and again, this is not a real strong play. I don't think she'll be 8-1. She's she hasn't been higher than uh, 9-2 since March of 2019, and I don't think this race is going to be any different. I think she's probably going to be about 4-1, 5-1.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with those odds. I do think Alfico will be the favorite, probably get bet a little bit heavily, more heavily than the morning line, maybe the 5-2 range, I would say. But outside of that, I don't really, she could easily be the second choice in here based on, I mean, everybody knows she's going to be the lone speed. So people do bet speed. Any other horses catch your interest in here, or that you would use as like B's or C type horses in a pick five?
Well, Princess Grace, I mean, I think she's going to take some money. It's kind of an odd jockey placing with Kent Desormo coming in to ride for Mike Stidham. He did ride this filly to a win, and I mean, she's done nothing but win. I mean, that is one of those, one of those things, and she's never run a bad race. So, depending on where she's able to get a trip, I mean, certainly she would be a horse that's going to be running at the end. Um, with a 13 horse field, some of these outside horses are just going to have to take way back, and uh, I just don't know that they're going to be able to make up the ground. Videra would be one who I would probably look at if she was inside, but is being post 13 and not having any real speed. I mean, she's going to be 10th, 12th, 13th, like going on the backside. And the De La Rose showed that, she has a kick, but she doesn't have quite the kick that's going to be good enough, especially going a mile. And that's the thing, the dynamics of a mile race are a little different. Usually, a mile race, you get more pace. Um, but here, there's nobody really stretching out. There's no sprinters trying to get the mile. And like you said before, there's just not a lot of other speed. So I think that plays a factor. And the horses that save ground in the first turn are probably going to have a better shot of, saving energy and being able to outfinish the other ones too. So, um, I mean, I'm going to probably spread a lot. I'm not crazy about Empress Josephine as a horse that can come over and win, but we've seen horses with spotty European form come over here and really pick it up. So she'd be definitely one I would use underneath, and I would probably even, I'd probably use Abscond underneath as well. But I mean, I might wind up using 8 horses underneath in this race.
I can see that. Empress Josephine is definitely one that will be on my tickets. There's no way that a shipper like that's going to come over, get a good inside post. You almost know she's going to get a good trip from there as long as she can find some room in the stretch. And if she wins, there's no way I'm going to get blown out of the pick five by that. And I agree with you on Princess Grace. She's a horse who has done nothing but won. She ran a nice speed figure for me in the yellow ribbon when she won easily, albeit with a really nice setup. There was a lot of pace in there, but it's not like she came from a million lengths behind. And despite drawing the 10 post here, I think she's a filly who has enough tactical speed to be able to use it out of the gate and kind of get position going into that turn. And I've always been a guy that likes horses coming out of the Kentucky Downs races. It does seem to give them some extra fitness, and I think she's a player as well.
Yeah, I mean, Regal Glory, Daddy is a legend. I mean, these are all horses I could use underneath, and then in the for sure. I mean, it's again, it's a Keeneland type of race. Your horses coming from all over the place, and they all, you could throw a blanket over them, and there's not a huge difference between the horses who would be considered the first 2 good horses and the horses who are 7th and 8th. So, and odds, certainly will be, price matters, and I mean, even a horse like Harvey's Little Goyle. I mean, you draw a line through the personal engine. When they tried the dirt again against Latrushka, and you look at her lines, and with the right trip, she could be right there as well. So tough
Yeah,
race.
she's one I've always thought was better on turf. There was this kind of false narrative that she was as good on dirt and turf, largely based on a win over that quirky aqueduct track that's like might as well be run on the moon as far as I'm concerned. So I think her dirt racing experiments are over after that personal ensign, but she hasn't been in top form this year. She came back good in the Bogey. She's an interesting one to watch and probably going to be the biggest price she's been in a long time. So definitely a tough race. And do remember, this is the second leg of that all turf pick three that you alluded to earlier. And that said, we'll move on to the next one where things don't get any easier for us. It's for 2-year-olds, the Claiborne Breeders Futurity, a grade one. I'll be honest, I hadn't looked at this race much before this morning. I saved it for so it would be kind of fresh in my head. All I had seen about it on social media was people complaining about the morning line. Where did you start in this race, Chuck?
Well, this is another race where post position is gonna play a factor. I like Classic Causeway the best, except for yes, post 13. And you're asking a horse to do a lot when you're asking him to go from a sprint one race, maiden special, to a two-turn race. And this is a grade one race and it's a stake race, but for the most part, these horses, this is more like an allowance race than a stake race. I mean, there's very little proven. Um, Nobody's really proven much outside of being able to break their maiden. But post 13 is so tough, especially when you're not exactly sure who's going to be showing speed. Now, there's not a lot of speed signed on. Like, there's not a lot of horses that just went, super fast first time out and just left the field in the dust. So I wouldn't be shocked if Jose Ortiz took a shot and really sent hard at a post 13 to try to get into some sort of position in the first turn, maybe third or fourth. Maybe he's two or three wide if he can clear most of the horses. But that's a risk, because if you break a step slow, or three or four other guys have the same plan, suddenly you're hung five wide. And do I want to take him at 9-2, the 7-2, five wide? Because I think he'll get bet a little bit more than his morning line too. But I'm skeptical about taking a horse at that price. If he was going to be 12-1, and I would take every shot, and if he loses, he loses. But there's a horse in here, and this is it's going to be a little bit of a stretch, but we've seen these connections do things before, and my I'm going to be looking a lot at Seal Beach, number 4.
Hey, we're never going to knock you on this show for landing on a 30-1 morning line. Ever. That's one thing I will, people make selections and, we see it a lot on Twitter, and I do the Pace Advantage message board, and people, tell them why a 30-1 can't lose. Well, we all know a 30-1 isn't likely to win, but I always want to hear the case to be made for them. The horse is 30-1 for a reason. I mean, there's obviously some falls or something missing, but it's the nuggets of good information that I like to hear. So what do you got on Seal Beach?
Well, the horse is shown some continual improvement. He raced early in the Saratoga meet, going 5.5 on the off track. Didn't show any speed at all, and came home pretty well. The horse who won that race came back and won. So it wasn't like it was a super weak race. Maker stretches him out a month later, going 6.5. Adds blinkers. He kind of chases, and my prankster just crushed the field. And he was second. He was clearly just second best in there. But the horse who won the race, won in a pretty spectacular fashion. Comes back a month later, races at Churchill, again adds a little bit more distance, and he sits much closer to the pace. And now Castellano's riding again, and to me moved a little early in this race, and he finished second to a horse who's in the race. Uh, Great Escape, who is uh, Brissett's horse, number 9, who broke his maiden after running second first time out of Ellis Park. But Seal Beach is stretching out to 2 turns, and I like the fact that Maker goes to Le Peru here because for whatever reason, Le Peru is a different rider at Keeneland. I don't know why. I don't know why he does so well. I have no real feel for that, but um, I wasn't thrilled with Castellano's ride last time, and it's not that he did anything wrong. I just think that he moved a little bit too aggressively, and I think if he had just kind of sit and made a little bit of a late run, and he probably was going to be second anyways. But I just think stretching out, I think this horse is going to sit in a really good spot. He's probably going to lay third or fourth. He's going to be able to save ground in the first turn, and he's 30-1. So Makers had bombs win this race before. And I mean, I'm not really sold on anybody else in this race. I mean, Don't Wait Up was impressive um, both times, both races. He ran good races. Last time he collided with a couple, and he did beat Command Performance, who was one of the horses that did get bumped pretty badly at the start. Command Performance, showed the form of that race was going to hold up by running second in the Champagne. To Jack Christopher and the controversially timed Champagne. So he's shown that that race looks like a good race coming out of it. But he's going from 6 furlongs to a mile in a 16th, which um, I don't have any numbers that say that it's worse, but it just seems that it's tougher to go from 3/4 to a 2-turn race than it is for the horses that have gone 7/8 or gone around 1 turn, like a 1-turn mile.
Yeah, I don't have numbers in front of me, but I have run those numbers before, and it's undoubtedly true. And the same holds true in reverse. Like I watched the Naira show, and Andy Serling talks about turnbacks. He loves a good turnback, but turning back to 7 is infinitely better than turning back to 6 from these 2-turn races. So it was something I did happen to look up. I don't have the exact numbers, but stretching out from 7 definitely is a much better than 6.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think this is the greatest field of 2-year-old colts. I think that Stellar Tap, they're trying to make an excuse. He was green last time, but I mean, that wasn't a great race. Mr. Boma's races are slow. Double Thunder, he's kind of a dead one run closer type. I know he won the sapling. I really question, how strong that field was, and really, do you want Paco on a horse that's going to, be on the inside, stuck behind, probably laying eighth, ninth, stuck on the inside. I mean, you're about 50-50 to get taken down. Um, Rattle and Roll had the excuse at Saratoga when he bolted and eased that he got hit in the eye with a clod of dirt, and he came back and um, you know ran okay. But I don't know there was a whole lot in that race at Churchill Downs. He looked good doing it. He certainly could improve around. I mean, he improved around 2 turns in that race because I mean, you throw the middle race out, but American Sanctuary, again, he comes out of that same Monmouth race that I'm not sure is that strong. Uh, Max Time has looked pretty slow. Costa Terra, I mean, that's been with the Asmussen B or C team and draws an outside post. Kevin's Folly is just, seems like he's just okay. And um, I just don't know. I mean, King Curlin, King Curlin's probably a horse I'll use on the bottom of like triples and supers if I use them just because of pedigree. I mean, the dam side mostly. was good on the turf. But I mean, he is by Keeneland, and he did race pretty well at Kentucky Downs. Is your theory about the Kentucky Downs, closers at least. The trainer wins at a really high percentage, but I mean, mostly cheap claiming horses on the B-level circuit. So, I mean, you can kind of take those numbers with a grain of salt. I don't know that she's even run the Greatest Stake race, but
Right.
that's the type of horse that maybe gets lucky and runs up the rail and finishes third and completes the try at 55-1. But I mean, I don't know what you think about her at this race, but I don't see a whole lot of stars coming out of it.
Yeah, it's tough. The one who I think could be a star is the one you started with in Classic Causeway. His first race was really fast. He won easy, but I have similar concerns about the post. Like you said, we have him shown too wide on the pace projector after a half mile, but like you said, it doesn't take too many other horses thinking the same way to run, even though I believe they use the alternate finish line at a mile and a 16th, but it's still a short run into that first turn at Keeneland. So it's going to be a tough trip from out there, and you're not going to get much value at the window. I'm with you on Double Thunder. He will not be on my tickets at all. I'm not buying him in the slightest. He's run 4 times, even though he's won 3 of them. His best speed figure was just a 93. And the horse you brought up, Seal Beach, has actually run 96 and 94 on my numbers his last 2 times out. So he's a horse who you kind of stole my thunder a little. I actually really like him in this spot. I'm not sure he's really going to be 30-1 given those connections. Maybe the fact he's still a maiden will drive it up some, but both of his races have been strong. My Prankster, who won that race easily, that maiden race has been a pretty key race. He came back to run well in that Champagne. Steel Beach, although he didn't win, ran well. The third place finisher ran a good second with an improved speed figure. Cogburn came out of that race to win again, to win next time out. So I think he has some really hidden form in here, and even if he doesn't win, he's going to be on all my vertical tickets as well. So I'll use Classic Causeway somewhat. I will use Seal Beach, not using Double Thunder at all. The horse that I was most perplexed about was Stellar Tap because he looked so good that first time out, and I'm not buying the excuses from the Iroquois. I thought it was a weak race. I watched it 3 or 4 times trying to figure out what happened. I mean, there was a little bit of bumping, but if anything, he was backing up when that happened for me. So I don't think I'm going to use him. I'll use a couple of the others that you mentioned. I think Don't Wait Up has a chance. I'll use him more as a C-type horse. Not a fan of that stretch out. Rattle and Roll, who you mentioned, I don't like him at all. He's been particularly slow on the speed figures. So I'm going to lean on some prices in here and try to beat the two, at least the morning line favorite and Stellar Tap, who I guess is the second choice now that I think about it. So I'm throwing out the top two, going to spread pretty wide in here and really look for a price because it's a case where I just don't like the favorites at all.
Yeah, I mean, this is, like I said, it's a grade 1 stake, but there's the only stake winner in this race is Double Thunder, who won the Sapling, which it doesn't inspire a great deal of confidence. I mean, so
the one thing you can say for him, he didn't even feel the whip that day. that joke never gets old. It's good. At least for me. It's probably my listeners probably are tired of it by now.
Yeah, well, it's a statement of fact.
Let's move on to the final leg. I guess it's changed names. Now it's just the Keeneland Turf Mile. I can't keep track of all these sponsor names over the years, not just at Keeneland, but everywhere.
Yeah.
But this year it is the Keeneland Turf Mile, the final leg of the Pick 5, the last leg of that All Turf Stakes Pick 3, which we covered all of them. So I'm glad you pointed that out. And I would say the horse we have to start with is the winner of the Breeders' Cup Mile last year, Order of Australia, who's apparently coming back one race early this year. I imagine the plan is to stick around for the Breeders' Cup, but he's here for this one. And what do you make of his chances?
Well, I have a story about him. I
We
was
like stories,
frustrated
so.
at the Breeders' Cup because I don't know, just you know, you know how you have tough days. I was having a tough day, and I said, you know what, the American turf horses suck, and I just want to cash a ticket. And inside the pounds would probably like mock me for this, but I said, screw it. In the Breeders' Cup Mile, I'm not handicapping the race. I'm just boxing the Europeans. And if you had forgotten, Order of Australia was on the also eligibles,
Yes.
and he was on the other page of my program that I had, and I didn't include him because I forgot he was in the race. And when he ran by them and he won, the person I was with was like, "Oh my God, the Europeans, you have that," and I was like, "I don't think I have that." And did I have that? No, I did not have that. So
Oh,
Order of
Chuck,
Australia
I
was
thought this was going to be a feel-good story, and your day perked up, and
it
we were all
was
going to rejoice in your cashing. And unfortunately, it was what happens to most horse
it
players.
it was just. And listen, I can't like claim any wonderful handicapping theories that I used. I was just boxing the Europeans, period. Just a straight six. It should have been a 6-horse box. It was a straight 5-horse box, and um, I mean, he ran really well for in that race. His form's been a little spotty since, but I mean, his last couple were good, and he just looks like like we were talking about earlier. The Europeans just have been dominant coming over, and Aiden O'Brien's. People were mocking him a little bit early in the year about coming to the U.S. where he hadn't had a whole lot of success, but this year that's changed, and he has had success, and I mean, he's certainly the horse to beat in here. There was another European in the race who I probably will regret doing this, but I'm probably going to use Space Traveler as my key pick in this race. Um, and I just think he had two trips in the U.S. that were impossible. In the Mr. D, the Arlington Million minus 400,000. He was just, and he was taken back. I mean, that was the plan. It wasn't like he just kind of fell to the back. The guy took a hard hold of him early in the race. And you look at his European races, and he does. He finishes strong. I mean, he's a one-run closer, and he was taken back behind a ridiculously slow pace that wound up seeing two Emmys win. You could run that race 100 times, and two Emmys would probably win, twice because he got a 52 and 2.5. But he did close ground in that race. I mean, he was running at the end. He galloped out super strong, um, and he came back in the Woodbine Mile. And while the pace wasn't quite as dawdling as it was in the Arlington race, it was slow. And he got beat by another horse who went wire to wire. And he outfinished a pretty good group in that race. He comes here. He gets his regular rider back. Um, and I just think that he might just be a little better than everybody else, other than Order of Australia. But I don't think he's going to be 6-1. I think he'll drift up to 8, 9, 10-1, and that's what I'm going to try.
Yeah, I've got no problem with him. I'm using two horses in this race, and you covered him, and it's largely for the reasons that you state. I just don't think the American horses are any good. It's kind of a carryover from the Breeders' Cup. I had put on Twitter that I wasn't buying into the hype of Mo Forza after he won last weekend. A lot of people out west think he's really good, and I guess for a state U.S. horse, he is pretty good. But somebody posed the question to me, who are the other U.S. horses that you like? And then you see this field, and it's like, well, I guess they had a point there. The difference is I was talking about the Breeders' Cup, and he's not going to have to beat U.S. horses. He's going to have to beat horses who ship over because they're going to get better than this group, be better than this group. I mean, how many times can we see Ivar and Diamond Oops and some like it Hot Brown and Field Pass? We know what these horses are at this point. And I just think Order of Australia is better. I agree with everything you said about Space Traveler. I don't think he's had things go his own way in either of those two races. I think the Woodbine one is a little less obvious, but I agreed with everything you said there. I think that it's one of those hidden bad trips. So I'm kind of torn. If I had to make a top pick, I'd probably say Order of Australia, but I'm going to use them in equal strengths. The thing with Order of Australia for me is the Breeders' Cup Mile seemed like a fluke. He came in with really low time form ratings, and that's obviously a big part of why he was 73-1 that day. But one of the questions I have about the time form readings, and we are affiliated with them, is I'm not sure how well they translate when we're talking about 2 and 3 year olds. And he was a 3 year old last year. He's come back as a 4 year old, and his time form ratings are fine. They're all in the 120s. They do tend to run a little quicker here, I think, when they run well. He has run well in a Group 1. He won a Grade 2 in Ireland. So he just looks like the horse to beat to me. Space Travelers right there with 120 type speed figures. And I'm just looking to beat these horses that, we just see over and over again in these races. And they just all have spotty records. It seems to come down to trips, and I think these two are better runners. Anybody else at all that you'd consider using?
Um, well, it's funny because you put a dagger in him, but uh, Ivor, I think, putting the blinkers back on might be able to sit a decent trip and get a piece of this. He's another one. Like I don't see like he's shown a propensity to like Keeneland. In the Breeders' Cup Mile, he ran well, um, but he hasn't had he has been away for a long time. But to me, he's one. When you look at his performances, I mean, he came over from Argentina with a huge reputation. He showed he was pretty good. He won the Shadwell Mile here last year, and then, like you said, he ran really well in the Breeders' Cup. And then he went to the shelf and had one race that he just didn't get involved at all with. So the blinkers have gone back on. Um, you could certainly ask the question: was his good U.S. form prior to the last race because of Lasix? Yes or no? I don't know. It's hard to say. It's conjecture. But he returns back, and to me, he's of the U.S. hopefuls. I think he's probably the best horse. Um, and it wouldn't take much. One of his best efforts will get him right. We'll make him close, and the maker horses on the outside will probably be contenders, but he drew poorly with both of them. I mean, it just looked like you said, it's the same old, same old, same old, same old. And I think Order Australia is probably a better horse than Space Traveler if you compared the two. If you just matched up resumes and you said, hey, who's a better horse? Probably Order Australia, but the better horse doesn't always win. And sometimes the pace, the price matters.
Oh, for sure, and especially on turf, even more so. We did this right, and I'm already forgetting the name of the horse who beat Arklow last time. That I Imperador, I think is his name, who
Yes,
I
yeah.
actually bet and cashed, and I freely admit he wasn't the best horse, but that was part of my thinking. You don't always have to be the best horse. You just have to be able to be in contention and hope things work out, particularly on the turf. So I agree with you as far as the American horses. If I had to pick one, it would be Ivar, but I can only spend so much money on these tickets. He does seem to have an affinity for Keeneland. I think his Breeders' Cup Mile is better than it even looks, and he was fourth, only beaten 2 lengths. He won this race last year when it was known as the Shadwell. And who knows what happened to Churchill, but the trainer knows what he's doing. He seems to get the best out of him. So I can't blame anyone for using him, but I suspect he's going to be the American that gets bet the most. I guess some might get Hot Brown as possible, but that post is brutal for a horse like him. So just a race where you can't spread in every single one of them. And I think that's a tough sequence. So for me, I narrowed it down to two. Um,
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you at all, and it'll be really interesting to see how the uh, the the turf pick three, what the pool size winds up being, and you look at the three races and you say to yourself, this could pay a lot chalkier than you would expect if you get um, Golden Pal, you get one of the favorites in the middle leg, and then you get Order of Australia. You could wind up with favorite, and what is it going to pay, even with the $3 denomination? Or, I mean, you could see some real long payoffs if a stranger wins one of these two legs with the big fields. Um, and it's not like completely out of the question to see a 20-1 shot winning one of those races. So it'll be interesting to see how, and I hope it's well received, because I think that um, we've seen so many, like we had that jackpot wager kind of craze where all the tracks jumped in on that, and we don't need to go into that, but I mean, this is a kind of an anti-jackpot wager bet, right? I mean, this is a higher minimum, and it's um, you're taking three races that at least in this spot you have two sizable fields. So it'll be interesting to see how it's received. I think it'll be received well, but you never really know.
Yeah, I look forward to it. I remember, I mean, the pick three used to be a staple bet of mine because it often created value. I think the low minimums have killed it. Uh, I can't remember ever seeing a pick three in the last year that I was like, oh, I got to bet that one. But just because I know they generally don't pay what you think they should compared to when the minimum was $2. So a $3 minimum, I think it's going to be good, particularly if you can get some prices. That's when they tend to blow up because people just can't spread like they do. So at this point, normally in the show, we do a recap, but I've kept you on here pretty long already. If people want a recap of our picks, they can just rewind. It's really easy to do. I just want to say,
the recap by rewind.
yeah, recap by rewind because I don't want to spend another 5 minutes on that. And like I said, I've taken enough time. Just one more time, tell people where they can find you on Twitter and where the name of your podcast.
Yes, you can find me at Cannon Shell on Twitter, spouting off about a variety of subjects, usually the New York Knicks and horse racing of some sort. And the podcast is Going in Circles. Um, you can reach that. It's on Spotify. It's on all the big platforms. Just punch in Going in Circles and you'll see us.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you being on. As you know, we often talk sports as much or more than we talk horse racing. I've told you buy in early on Josh Giddey for Rookie of the Year. He looked amazing. I was pleasantly surprised, and unfortunately for me, we can't make fun of your Knicks anymore because they look like they actually have a quality team built this year and getting better. So that's good for the NBA when New York is good.
A cognizant plan. it's when you're used to being stepped on all the time, just one little sliver of light like last year, and it seems like they have a plan and they didn't overpay and they haven't traded their best players, and it's and Mr. Dolan has kept his mouth shut and stayed away, which is always a worry. So looking
I
forward
got
to
you.
it. Joe
All right.
Christofek, I'm in Joe Christofek's fantasy basketball league.
Oh,
Barry and a
nice.
bunch of guys. Yeah, so those guys better watch out because I'm taking this stuff seriously this year.
Good. Now, one piece of advice, don't draft Knicks. Like whenever I drafted Thunder, I would immediately put them on the disabled list. So,
Well, no, I'm going to draft Bulls, and then I'm going to try, make Joe try to pry them away from me because he loves the Bulls.
well, he can enjoy Billy Donovan for another year. We had plenty of him here in Oklahoma City. Mostly good. I didn't dislike Billy Donovan, but I digress. I don't want to keep you any longer. I really appreciate you coming on, Chuck. You were a great guest, and I don't know, David doesn't get many vacations, but one of these days we'll have you back on, and looking forward to listening to your podcast again on Monday. So that'll do it for this edition of the Timeform US Forecast, and we'll be back next week. David will be in when we review these races and more on the Timeform US Pacecast.